My dad is squeezing my hand as we walk up the steps to Evan's funeral home in Milford, Ohio. My grandma has just died, and we've flown in from LA to make the arrangements. So as we walk in, my dad and I are both struck by how much it resembles Fisher & Sons Funeral Home on 6 Feet Under. It has the dark mahogany paneling, and then the casket display wall, and the kitchen and the upstairs living area where the family obviously resides. And this is 2004, at the height of that show, and my dad and I are both huge fans. The funeral director greets us with kind eyes and a compassionate smile, and he introduces himself as young Ben. He doesn't actually say the young part, but he looks like he's about 17, and he's so earnest and elf-like that I just label him young in my head. I am so sorry for your loss, Mr. Dolan. Thank you, Ben. She was a great lady, and we are here to celebrate her life. Now, for as long as I can remember, whenever anybody asks my dad how he's doing, he has 3 stock answers. Number 1, terrific. Number 2, any better and I'd be scared. And number 3, just another day in paradise. My dad is great all the time. He doesn't do down, he doesn't linger in melancholy, he's not a big fan of Hamlet. So when he's hit with something as big as his mother dying, his personality kind of short circuits. As we've been driving around town running errands, he's been greeting people, strangers, with a kind of manic desperation. So young Ben sits us down and offers us coffee and starts explaining what's included in all the different packages they offer. He shows us the caskets and he talks about embalming and hair and makeup options, and then halfway through his spiel, my dad says, "We are going to have her cremated." Very good. Then we can schedule the viewing for tomorrow at 10. No viewing. I know that my dad cannot handle a viewing. He was traumatized as a kid by being forced to stare at dead relatives at wakes. Okay, well then, there is just the matter of one more identification. I already identified her at the hospice care facility. Yes, Mr. Dolan, but it is just standard procedure to have you identify the deceased one more time after they've been transferred to our care. It is a legal matter. My dad nods his head and says he'll be right back. But I stand up and insist on going with him. I want to see her. I mean, not out of any morbid curiosity. It's just, it doesn't feel real to me. You know, I need proof. My dad was with my grandma when she died, but I didn't make it in time. So we walk in to the little parlor where my grandma is laid out, and I catch a glimpse of her, and I almost immediately turn to young Ben and say, "I'm so sorry, but this is the wrong person. This is not her." But then I see my dad walk over, and he touches her forehead, and he kneels down beside her, so I turn, and I look at her again, and she looks nothing like herself. She's wearing this light pink hospital gown that barely covers her knees, and it is so cold in there that I just want to ask if she can have a blanket or something. And her skin is this sallow, grayish yellow color, and her hair is just mashed down flat, and it's kind of frizzy, and it looks so thin, you can see her scalp. And her nose looks stark and bony, and her cheeks are hollow, and her face is gaunt and rotting like a rotting apple. Not rotting, but it's sunken like a rotting apple. My grandma had her hair blow-dried and styled at Carol's Coiffeurs every week for 30 years. It was always round and poofy, like cotton candy. My grandma had an easy, warm smile, and her Irish eyes twinkled, and her manicured nails shone. She ran the bingo at Meijer's grocery store, and she worked the polls on election day, and she rode on a float in the local 4th of July parade. She was practically the senior citizen prom queen of Milford fucking Ohio. But this husk of a person, this emaciated vessel, this silent, still, cold, small form, this is not her. I thought I was ready for this. I considered myself a spiritual seeker. I read Joseph Campbell. Practiced A Course in Miracles. I attended the Agape International Center of Truth in Culver City. I was to be a beacon for my dad and my brother through my grandma's transition to the spiritual realm. I would be grounded, and I would be compassionate, and I would be glowing. But when I walk in that room and look at her, I realize I'm not prepared for this. My grandma was decidedly Catholic. She went to Mass at St. Andrews every Sunday. She sent my dad to Catholic school all his life. She was married in the Catholic Church twice. That's another story. But for some reason, my dad asks a very nice, but very not Catholic woman minister of unknown denomination to preside over my grandma's memorial service. Now, granted, this woman was the pastor at the hospice care when my grandma died, so maybe it was just a matter of convenience, I don't know. I didn't think that much of it until halfway through the service, when Ruthie, my grandma's neighbor, leans forward and whispers in my ear, "Is any of this service going to be Catholic?" And then later, John, a mentally handicapped man who worked at the local Friendly's ice cream parlor and hung out with my grandma and her friends, he sidles up to me, right? And he looks like the cat that ate the canary. I mean, he is bursting at the seams, and he's kind of talking under his breath. "Nobody can believe that you didn't ask Father Timothy to do the service." And he's about to continue when Ruthie and my grandma's friend Hazel, who are within earshot, swoop in, shush him, and whisk him away like the geriatric mafia. Stand there staring after them, horrified. And then it all becomes clear to me. We came into this small, tight-knit, Midwestern community where my grandma was the belle of the ball, and in their eyes, we've desecrated her memory and completely disregarded how they do things. We had no viewing, and no mass, no casket, and no priest. Oh, I can hear the town chatter in my head. What did they do to her? Cremation? That's not right. It's sacrilegious. We didn't even get to say our last respects. And who was that woman standing up there talking about Eileen as if she knew her? She wasn't even a nun, for Christ's sake. Oh, Father Timothy was so hurt. I knew that the whole town was talking about us and would be for a very long time. I look at my dad and my brother who are standing right next to me, and they're completely clueless. They have no idea what's just happened. So I'm pretty sure that my dad and his mother failed to have the conversation, you know, the one you're supposed to have about end-of-life issues and funereal preferences. And I guess it's not surprising considering the way they communicated. Well, they talked to each other every day, not on the phone, but on 30-minute cassette tapes that they would mail to each other. Remember cassette tapes, the little plastic holes? It started when my dad went to Vietnam, and then it just continued for 35 years. And the thing is, these tapes were filled with absolute minutia. My grandma would talk about the weather and the mail. It was kind of like the elderly lady's version of Twitter. And my dad, on his end, would talk for half the tape, and then he would ambush me and my brother to fill the other half with whatever we did at school that day or whatever was going on. I mean, this is a huge commitment. It's 30 minutes of listening to a tape and 30 minutes of talking on a tape every single day. my dad would listen to my grandma's tape sometimes on this high-speed setting so that she'd sound like Alvin and the Chipmunks, but he could get through it in half the time. It's so sweet and weird and heartbreaking to just think that they talked so much, but when it came time to talk about the real things, you know, the life and death issues, they couldn't bring themselves to do it. Oh, Grandma. I promise to have a Catholic Mass said in your name. I have no idea how to do that, but I have some Catholic friends who could point me in the right direction. I promise to run the sweeper, that's what my grandma called the vacuum, to run the sweeper twice a week and try to keep a tidy house because you taught me that's important. And I promise to take care of Dad as best I can, but you know how he is. And to have the conversation when the time comes so that I know how to honor him. Forgive us, Grandma.